Hey everybody, this is Nephi Cole from the Your Mountain Podcast. We're excited to share some upcoming information about a few new sponsors, but you'll have to wait for that. First, we want to say thank you to Vortex Optics, Gunworks, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, Federal Premium Ammunition, and Viking Tactics, who have been longtime supporters and strategic partners. We also need to say this. The opinions you hear on Your Mountain from individual hosts or guests do not necessarily represent those of Your Mountain, our sponsors, or other entities we're affiliated with professionally or otherwise. You've waited long enough. Go listen to the show.
There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is Your Mountain.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Your Mountain Podcast. As always, I'm your host, David Wilms, and I've got Mike McGrady and Nephi Cole in their respective locations. How are you guys doing today?
Never been better.
I feel very socially distant.
I don't even really, you
lonely.
should. Yeah, you should. I do too. I don't even really want to talk much about what we're going through right now. Things are so bad right now that I'm recording this in my wife's craft room in the basement of my house. Like I don't even have my normal office and setup anymore. My kids have taken over. They're feral. I mean, it's just, it's more out of self-preservation and protection that I've locked myself away in this basement room. I'm ready. Yeah. I'm ready for this to be done.
You know, it's funny because you think you've got a handle on it when it all starts. You're like, it's going to be okay. And now you realize it's not going to be okay. It's not going to be okay.
No, turns out I don't like being with my family 24 hours a day.
Which
and
is
I can
funny.
I can say that because I know they don't listen to this.
Yeah.
No, I'm
like
kidding.
2 weeks ago, you were so excited about it.
Oh my gosh. No, I actually do like being with them. They're really great. And I've been my 2-year-old is getting into fishing. And so we've done that. My 8-year-old, I got her on a box call for turkeys just a couple days ago for her first time calling. That was awesome. My 11-year-old is more like a 15-year-old and doesn't want to be seen with me in public or outdoors. So she just locks herself away in a room and plays computer games and reads books and does whatever. But the other two, we actually have been getting out some, but it's all that other time just kind of confined in the house that I'm ready to break the chains, break these shackles off and get out there all the time. But we're not here to talk about that. We are actually here to talk about taking the shackles off and getting out there all the time. And we're going to live vicariously. You know, Nephi, Mike, myself, all of our listeners, we can live vicariously now through our guests today, who are going to talk about a great new show that's coming up here later. Well, in the first part of 2021, a show that they're working on right now called AdVANture. And we're joined by the star. Can I say the stars of that show? How do you say that? The stars of that show, Jim Kinsey, Brandon Nelson.
Jim, here's one thing that I'm excited about this podcast. The thing I'm most excited about. The only thing, one thing that I probably like as much as buying just hunting gear is buying gear for my truck. Somehow I feel like you have, it just doesn't seem fair. I think you figured out how to do both and call it a job.
Yeah, thanks for having us on today, guys, to Your Mountain Podcast. It's super humbling experience to be even invited on here. So I appreciate you having us on here. And so kind of crazy. Last year, about July or so, I kind of came up with a new idea to kind of reinvent myself. Skullbound TV had a great 9-year run and decided to, how would I get outdoors and still tell a great story of sustainability and conservation? And we came up with the concept of AdVANture Hunter. So, that's how I met up with Brandon Nelson. And, he is the former owner of the AdVANture company. And I kind of met him through a cold email. I just sent him an email and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this sustainability-driven show, rolling around in a Mercedes. Would you guys be interested in sponsoring me? And he was like, hey, I run their social media and tell me more. And it was that's kind of how Brandon and I met. And so that was it.
Yeah, I love it. And so first, spell AdVANture for me. So for folks that don't know, spell this.
Sure. It's like adventure with a V-A-N in the middle. So AdVANture, AdVANture.
So
basically rolling around. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, rolling around in a van. It's like you're going on an adventure, but in a van. So that's kind of how the whole concept came up.
And I'm guessing that these adventures are a little bit different than the ones I get, where I rent a minivan and load a bunch of kids in the car and you drive across the country.
Dave's adventures.
We won't get into those. I'm curious.
We what Dave does.
Dave, your adventures sound emotionally driven. Maybe
emotionally draining.
Draining.
For sure.
They're not recharging. These aren't. It's like a different. It's more like I don't know. Yeah. So Dave has this thing where he doesn't like, when he goes on trips, he doesn't like putting mileage on his hunting truck because that's for hunting, and so he goes down to like Hertz. And we're not endorsing Hertz, but he goes down to some place and like rents a minivan, and like. So he always goes on his trips in rented minivans, which, I mean, there's a certain level of bravery there. You got to admit.
You're an adventurer. That's awesome.
Adventure or adventure. Yeah. I mean, I do. I'm so cheap. So I run the numbers on how much it costs per mile to run my truck. And I think it's just actually cheaper for me to take a long car trip with a bunch of kids instead of throwing them in the truck. Just rent a minivan, put all the miles on that, let them be comfortable, give them each a row of their own so they won't be fighting with each other. And then like the embarrassing thing about those minivans, like I don't want to buy one because I don't want to buy one because it's a minivan. But at the end of the day, like from a design perspective, you get into those things. It's like you're sitting on a throne. You've got 9,000 cup holders. I mean, everything. Your kids are as far away as they can possibly be, so you can't even hear them screaming at each other. It's actually kind of the perfect setup. But I'm guessing it's not as good as the setup you've got. So I want to hear about what you're doing. Yeah, we want to know what you're doing.
Brandon, maybe you could speak a little bit on that, because I mean, you basically grew the AdVANture company from the ground up. And so Brandon Nelson is my co-host. He formerly owned the AdVANture company. Maybe you could talk a little bit on the vans and the builds, Brandon.
Sure. So currently I'm driving a 2015, not 4-wheel drive, which can be a plus and a minus. 144-inch wheelbase Mercedes Sprinter van. It's a 4-cylinder, premier gas mileage, but getting into the rugged areas can be difficult. And so we have some tools that we actually use when we're going off-roading to actually be able to navigate those off-road areas, especially for a non-4x4 vehicle, which, not to throw in a plug too soon, but OnX off-road, insane. It's getting me where I need to go. Being that I don't have a 4-wheel drive, I'm able to navigate these areas swimmingly, which is so cool. But as far as the AdVANture company, I started that with my brother and a good friend of mine 4 or 5 years ago. And it started from an Instagram account, which is funny to say, but I guess things happen like that in today's day and age. And we built it from the ground up. I wanted to build a van. I was currently working at GoPro full time, and I could not for the life of me afford the rent in the Bay Area. I was living on buddies' couches. I was driving back home to my parents' house, sleeping on their couch when my old bedroom was filled with a new renter that they had brought in. So I was over it, and I buckled and bought a freaking van.
So you're like that guy in the van down by the river?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
There's
how it all
not
started.
Enough times that joke has been played out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not.
Continue.
You're like, you never heard that one before. Yeah.
Seriously though, like I covet, I'm kind of a gear junkie a little bit. And
I'd love to have one of those sprinters and just go around and national parks, state parks, hunting, fishing, everything. Just one awesome, let it go and drive around, get up.
No, I've seen some that are absolutely, like, honestly, that you covet. Like, you look at the thing and you're like, that looks pretty awesome. Like, I wonder if I could convince my wife that, like, her spot in the garage should belong to one of those.
Yeah, that's a hard conversation right there, and I don't covet those conversations. So
it hasn't gone well.
So you built this van, bought this van, you set it up the way you wanted to set it up. How did you get from, having this van that is a place to live because rents in the Bay Area are so high, to this concept of using this van for adventure purposes?
Yeah, so I worked at GoPro for a handful of years, and unfortunately they had a tough time. They did layoffs, and I was within the third round of layoffs, which was totally fine. And we still have an awesome relationship. I do contract work with them still, and actually just finished up a really cool muskie project for them out in Minnesota. And that was, if you want to check that out, Outdoor Life online, check out their website. It's a really fun project. Caught an absolute monster muskie on the fly. Anyways, what was the question?
How you got from
muskie right now? I'm like, what, you lost me here. Muskie.
Yeah. I mean, we can just talk about that for a while if you want, but no, I was asking how you went from, you were talking about the rents being so high and you needed a place to live basically, to then turning that into
a builder.
You're traveling, you're using this as your, adventure, your adventure touring vehicle.
Yeah. So when we initially started building it out, we had zero idea what we were doing. My childhood friend of mine, Shane Titus, he has a background in contract work, never done a van, never converted things like this before, but we jumped in it head first. He had a shop, and on the weekends and after hours, I would drive back down to Santa Cruz County, where I'm from, and we would just crank on this thing. And we did it for over a year to get this thing to a place where it was actually looked good and completely livable. At first, it was just a mattress. I had a mattress. I threw it in the van, and I slept in it in the GoPro parking lot. They had amenities. They had a gym. They had showers. I was able to make things work up there. So over time, we converted this thing into a fully off-grid mobster, and I was able to go on really cool trips up into the Santa Cruz Mountains, and then even outside of home, going up north and down south and out into the Sierras. I do not have a toilet, and that was one monumental mistake. So moving forward, if you ever consider doing something like this, any of you out there, highly recommend a composting toilet or something in that realm that allows you to use the facilities when there's maybe not something available to you.
So, Dave, do you have to, I think it's super cool that you've started doing that, because even those of us who honestly, if you hunt, you're familiar with this concept. We're all trying to pack as much stuff as we possibly can into whatever our quote unquote hunting rig is, so that we can be somewhat self-sustaining wherever we're at. Jim, I'm curious, did you come to overlanding through the show, or did you have an overlanding rig that then kind of, introduced you to Brandon, or what? How did it go for you?
So years ago when I was a kid, back when I was 10, 12, my dad had it's like an overland vehicle. It was an old Toyota Land Cruiser, and we would cruise all over, in Maryland when I lived in the East Coast and that. And I was really inspired by 4-wheel drive, and we could go through the snow and up the river. And so I've always had a fascination with that whole 4-wheel drive and that overland. I guess they wouldn't even call it overland back then. It was just a cool 4-wheel drive. And then flash forward all these years, I've had a Toyota Tundra, blah, 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 the camper, the little pull behind jumping jack trailer. Well, now I'm thinking, I can combine all of that into one livable space, still be a minimalist where I can pack my gear accordingly and just take what I need, but I can travel around, and, be this nomadic filmmaker, so to speak. I can take all my camera gear and tell short stories and upload them right from the van. And so that's kind of the whole premises of kind of where I started as a kid. I'm always interested in filmmaking, and then how can I roll it all into one overland vehicle? And that's kind of where AdVANture Hunter comes in.
So Jim came to me on a cold email and came to me with this concept, and I was doing all the marketing for AdVANture at that time. I had sold the company to a good family friend of mine who still owns and operates this company out of Placerville, California. And Jim comes to me and is like, dude, I got this show. I've been doing this for 10 plus years. And I'm like, hook, line, and sinker. My background's action sports, telling stories, documentary films, and then also hunting. I grew up hunting on my grandpa's ranch in Eastern Oregon. And he came to me and I was like, this is an insane idea. I would not only love to help get you into an off-road epic overland vehicle, but also if I can help in any other way, I'm all ears, because this sounds really cool. And from there, it kind of just sprung into this partnership of sorts where I'm now helping Jim on any and everything. And I've now become the co-host of this TV show. And we currently have Jim's van being wrapped up in the shop right now, converting this thing into the end all be all of anything you could ever imagine for a hunting overland vehicle. 4-wheel drive. This thing is compact. You can fit it into a parking spot at a grocery store, but also take it anywhere in the mountains. I mean, you name it, it's going to go there. It has the ability to house guns in a locked safe. It has running water. It'll have water purification for when you're in the mountains. You need to pull water out of a creek, or LED lighting that is energy efficient, the whole solar system, keeping you off grid for weeks at a time. And if you're very mindful, months at a time with zero energy except the sun, which is absolutely unbelievable. The technology into this thing is bar none. It's next level. And to get him into this is making me jealous, one, and two, excited to be traveling inside of his van when we get out on some of these shoots.
That's awesome. So
are you going to sell that as like a model? I mean, because I'm going to start typing in Googling, trying to find that model, because it sounds pretty good.
Absolutely. This is going to be the premier hunting model for AdVANture Co. converted vans.
Yeah, Mike's got a performance bonus coming, so he's trying to figure out.
I got a good place for your money to go, Mike.
I'm sure my wife has a different idea, but I like your idea.
That sounds way better than my occasional throwing out the futon mattress pad I have from college 20 years ago into the bed of my truck and sleeping in that as I'm hunting. I've been known to do that a time or two, and yeah, I do still have a futon mattress. I don't have the frame. I literally just kept the mattress from college because it was pretty comfortable and it fits perfectly in the bed of a truck. That's my setup. That's my setup. Yeah. So
there's some stains on it, but it's still good.
There's some what? Some
stains on it, but
we're not going to talk about that. That's a family friendly show. But this setup sounds way better. So how do you wed that setup with what you're doing? So, talk about the show more, sure. And what you're doing with this setup with the show.
Okay. Yeah. I can speak a little bit on that, and I'm sure Brandon can touch base on it too. So sustainability driven, we're going to go, jump in our van and go meet up with some really cool people, people from, Brandon's world, the action sports people, GoPro, Red Bull athletes. We're going to meet up with, people in the hunt and hook space, the people that, like the founders of Cryptek. I'm going to be doing a hunt with him, and he's going to tell the Cryptek story this year with Butch Whiting, CEO of Cryptek. We've got, all these great people that are iconic in their set, careers. They're going to share, maybe rock climbing, or they're going to show us how to do, go out with Eric Jackson Kayaks, things of that nature. So we could bomb down a set of rapids, do some fishing, and then eat it at the end of the day on a grill. So the whole idea is just to be able to travel, and also push the, conservation. That's a huge part of our show. Been working with the Mule Deer Foundation for years, the National Wild Turkey Rate Federation for years. Those guys, have been, a big help to me. And so we want to show conservation inside the show. We're also going to be working with veterans. Chris Kyle said it best. It's our duty to serve those that serve us. And so we want to take, a veteran out a year and talk a little bit about, what the outdoors has done to help heal them in whatever they may be going through and take them on a hunt. So some of my greatest memories on Skullbound are, taking out like double amputee Navy SEAL Bo Richenbeck, or, a Medal of Honor recipient Clint Romeshay, people of that nature that have these iconic stories to tell, the things that they've overcome. And we want to share that with our audience.
I think that's super cool. So this is not just a hunting show. Basically, this is an outdoor adventure show.
100% outdoor adventure. I mean, what it doesn't pigeonhole me just into hunting or fishing, or, the world's, I always look at it this way. The world's a massive place to explore, and here you have a van. I mean, you can roll around and you can tell stories that people don't even know exist. You can meet cool people on the side of the road playing a fiddle or something, and they might have this iconic story that leads, as a filmmaker, down a storyline that, you could introduce them into sustainable living. You could talk about hunting. You just never know where it's going to take you. And I think each week we want to leave the audience going, what's coming next?
That's awesome. A lot of people don't know, and I think it's pretty integral to the policy discussions. When people talk about the size of the outdoor recreation economy, you're talking about, it's just a huge economy, and the domestic side of it's $400 billion a year. So that economy, a lot of people don't realize the level of interaction that there is. So, for example, the firearms industry, you got $50 billion a year. The RV industry is huge in the outdoor recreation economy. So a lot of people, when they get that outdoor recreation economy report and they see that $400 billion, they're thinking, oh yeah, hiking. What they're not seeing is that a massive amount of that is people purchasing fuel. It's vehicles with motors. It's RVing, it's camping. And then when people bifurcate it and they start talking about all these little, their little niche sports, the other thing that they're missing is that for most of us, we're not just hunters. We don't just hunt. We hunt and we bike and we kayak and we climb. And, these are all things that we do. And hunting is a piece of who we are, but it's not the only piece. And I think that's kind of an exciting thing that's been missing, is like people saying like, look, this is an outdoor recreation centered effort. I think it's super cool that you're going to be able to show people that, look, hunters are more than just hunters. And if you're not a hunter, you can be a hunter and be whatever else you are today. These things are compatible. I think that's super cool.
And Nephi, am I allowed to really quickly, because that was an awesome point, can I correct one part of it?
Yes, you may.
It's almost 900 billion, not 400 billion.
No. What I'm saying, you are absolutely right. Now I'm going to correct you, Dave.
Well,
so
okay.
When you're talking about the global scope of it, it's a $900 billion a year industry.
When you're saying global, you're talking national, not global.
I'm talking about sales. So when you say $900 billion a year, you're talking about sales, and you're talking about the value of products that are outside of the U.S. border also coming in. When you're looking at just the domestic side U.S., you're looking at about half of that, about $400 billion.
Okay, fair enough. But the total impact on the U.S. economy
is huge.
Is about $900 billion.
Yes.
Mm. All right. So now that we've thoroughly...
we're both right. It's both numbers are correct depending on how you reference the number.
Fair enough. Sorry.
We'll leave that to the pros. You guys
are kind of a worthless tangent.
Mike,
sorry.
It's like, Mike, would you... I'm just kidding. Mike's the judge. Mike sits there. He just has
You're
to
both wrong. You're both wrong.
Oh, dang it.
I don't know why, but I just feel
like it just has to be.
Yeah.
We're both wrong and we're both right. See? This is a great day.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy.
No, we're frequently wrong.
So can I ask you, so I had two questions for you, and if the other guys have one I want to ask. The first question I wanted to ask, so for me, the guy who has a truck that I love, it's set up with a shell on it and everything, what's the stuff that's going to make it, like, if you're going to pick like the few things that you're going to say, don't leave home without this, it's going to make living from your vehicle during an elk hunt or whatever the bee's knees. So that's the first question. And the next question, I really want to know about OnX Off-Road, because the overlanding, if anybody doesn't know, like, has been living in the woods, like, it's getting extremely popular. People are really figuring out that you can do super cool things with a vehicle and a map. And so I want to know a little bit more about OnX Off-Road.
Sure. So let me talk a little bit about OnX Hunt first off, just because when you say what is the one thing that I'd never leave without, and I haven't, and I've been working with these guys for 10 years, is Eric Siegfried, the founder, an amazing human. They've been such great partners that I can't talk enough about him. It's always like, oh, don't leave home without your credit card. Don't leave home without your wallet. But as a hunter, really, don't leave home without either the chip in your GPS or their onX Hunt app, which is an app that you can have on your phone. And I can see right there, you're running it over there.
Yeah, I paid for mine. I love it. I'm not going to lie.
It literally is a game changer. And let me tell you how important of a game changer it is, because for me, as an executive producer of a show, I need to know where I'm standing at all times. I can't be on somebody's private property or I'm getting a fine and then they'll put me on the headlines. So for me, it's highly, it's part of my job. I have to have it to know where I stand at all times. It's super important, but it also makes me way more successful as a hunter. Now, the new cool thing that they've come up with is the onX Off-Road app. Now, that is a game changer. Just like Brandon was saying earlier, it's got everything from if you're like maybe you're running an ATV or a quad or a motorbike, or if you're an overlander or in a just a 4x4 truck, it gives you access to state by state where you are, the closest campsites to where you're traveling, all the different public trails that you can jump on, and the level of how hard is it to navigate those trails. Some of them, like for a 2-wheel drive, for instance, you may not want to jump on a certain trail, but for this, it may have a trail that you can jump onto. So it's totally next level, and it's a very new app for us. Meaning, I haven't used it a ton yet, but we're starting to navigate that now because of our whole show with the Overland movement and the AdVANture Hunter show. So
is this a second app that you add, or does it run on the same background? So does it run with your onX Hunt, or do you run onX Hunt and onX Off-Road, both of them at the same, like? So
they're two separate apps, but if you've run onX Hunt at all, even just a little bit, you can run onX, the Off-Road, very easily. The user interface basically is very similar. So if you can run one, you can run the other.
That's awesome.
Hey, I've got a question too, and it's not. Wait, Nephi, you had a second question, didn't you? And I cut you off on that.
No, you didn't cut me. It was like, hey, what do you throw in your truck? But if you're going down the mapping route, ask the mapping questions.
Well, it's not really. It's more of a planning question. Yeah. It wasn't even a mapping question. It was, as I'm thinking through. You're talking about an adventure program that covers the continent. Right. You're looking at doing episodes all over the place. And I don't know that people are aware, and this is the policy nerd in me, right? And the legal nerd in me that thinks about this stuff. But I'm guessing the general public doesn't think about the type of planning that goes into production of a show like this. And I'm just curious if you can give some insight into things like, just basic, everybody knows you got to get your hunting and fishing licenses if that's going to be a part of your show. But you're going to have to get filming permits in different states, depending on where you're going to film, and how it might be a different agency that requires, you might have to have 3 or 4 permits in a state. Yep. And you're talking about being in a van where you're going to be driving across multiple jurisdictions all over the place. I'm just curious what level, this seems like high level planning, can you walk through what it takes to produce an episode like this?
Yeah. Let me, everybody always says they want my job. Oh man, you live the life. We watch you on Instagram. You do all these things. It's like, they have no idea what it actually takes to produce a show, let alone a series. And so I've been doing a long time, 21 years I've been producing. And, when you say, that's a great question, Dave, when you asked, how do you plan for this? Well, I have a couple little tricks up my sleeve. Okay. One of them is I do PSAs for the Forest Service. Okay. So any National Forest Service that I want to get on anywhere in the country, they write the scripts, have them approved in DC, send them to me, and we do stand-ups. So that gets out there, call to action to, millions of households. So that's how I get on every National Forest Service in America for free. Now, I'm sure anybody else could be listening to this and say, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. You can. It just takes, a lot of hard effort and work to get to that level to where you build those relationships. This whole industry is built around building relationships. If you can build a great relationship with, anybody, from the U.S. Forest Service all the way down to BLM state, whatever, they know that you're only going to benefit them because your platform hits millions of households. So they know it's I rub your back, they rub year back, and we get free filming permits. So that right there gets me over a massive hurdle right out of the gate. And then from there on, we like to work with tourism. So we'll work with various tourism, we'll talk to those guys who are coming through. Maybe we can feature, a restaurant or something of that nature. So tourism welcomes us. Like, for instance, Saskatchewan tourism, I've been working with them for years. So not only just, are we traveling all over the States, we'll jump into Saskatchewan and we'll do a piece on the Indigenous and First Nation people. And those guys will, they'll roll out the red carpet for us because we have a letter of invite from, the Providence. So it's a win-win. But like you said, there's a lot more to it than just that. We have to find out, hey, who are we going to be filming? Do they have the time? Can we schedule it on their calendar, a year in advance? Because let's face it, people are busy. They have businesses to run, families to feed. It's not like you can just, hey, let's just drop everything, roll up in a van and go for a hunt. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to know and why I brought it up is that for all the folks out there that want to be these, I don't know this is going to sound insulting to some people, but want to be the YouTube stars that strap on a GoPro, for example, Brandon, strap on a GoPro and, hit the trail and try and film their hunt and expect it, man, they're going to put that on YouTube and turn around and they're going to be a star overnight and they're going to have their own show. Producing a show, it's a lot more than the work behind the camera. It's all the prep that goes into it, right?
Yeah. And another, to speak on that, let me talk a little bit about Brandon Nelson. So Brandon is a 30-year-old. He's a younger version of me. He's a shooter, editor, highly creative, so when we kind of started first talking.
More hair.
He's got way more hair. He's even got the man bun going on, which I actually still have hair at 51. You can kind of see, but
you should rock the man bun. You should go for it.
He's rocking it. But
Jim, we could do man buns for the show.
I like it.
I think it's brilliant. It's a challenge. Challenge.
Just saying.
Dollar bet. I will mail you $1 when I see you in a man bun on the show. Dollar bet.
Okay.
That's worth a lot more than $1 from Dave, just so you know.
That may not sound like much, but I mean,
this man doesn't give up dollars. He doesn't give up nickels.
That's a big deal. That's a big time commitment right there.
Okay,
$1
sorry.
bet.
Sorry about the side. Sorry about the.
I was just to say, and so like for Brandon, for me, I'm just really blessed to have him on the team because he speaks to a whole other market that I don't. He's got all these non-endemics that I can't get to. He knows Eric Jackson, like they're buddies. He knows all these guys from GoPro and Red Bull. He's like, oh yeah, I know this guy. He rocks tight lines, and I know the guy that did free solo. I'm like, what? He knows them all. That's just how he rolls. And so, to have him on my team to help tell these stories, it's imperative that he's on it. I mean, I couldn't get to those people any other way. And let's face it, a lot of these guys, some of them aren't hunters. So we're introducing something, that's normal to us, hunting, cleaning your animal, putting in your freezer and eating it, especially during the COVID times. Let's take a look right now. The meat shelves are empty. People are in panic mode. Us as hunters, we're like, hey, let's open the freezer. Oh, look, I got some bear breakfast sausage. I've got some elk bratwurst. What do we want to eat today? It's totally different. And I think he's going to speak to a lot of those people.
So, Brandon, what is it that you sounds like you're a pretty big adventurer. Take the van out of the equation for a second. What kind of stuff is it that you that you do? I mean, I saw your bio going into this. I gotta say it was a little intimidating. With the kind of maybe fearlessness in which you live your life. Talk a little bit about that, about your background.
I do have a little edge, a little adrenaline junkie edge to me, which, for better or for worse is, makes my marriage better or worse and makes my family relationships better or worse. And I will say though, since getting married, things have tamed down a bit, and my wife is recently pregnant, and so that has also changed my adrenaline junkie edge slightly, not completely, just slightly. But yeah, I do love getting out and skydiving. I love the rush of opening that door at 13,000 feet and looking out, and all you see is open ground way down below. And then you're just like, see ya, and just fall out of the airplane. And it is so freeing. There's just so much freedom, and it's just it's in those little moments you get those jolts of adrenaline, and you get these, I don't know, it's just feelings of freedom, and you come back from those experiences even as a healthier human being. You have a better grip on reality. You know the people who love you. You know the people who you love and deeply, because you just experienced a life and death situation within 60 seconds. Your conversations with people coming out of these adrenaline fueled experiences are unsurmountable. They're so different from when you're just living a life that is casual, a 9 to 5, not to put that on any negative spin on it, but it's, for me personally, it elevates my life in relationally, which is very important to me. And then also in experiences. So surfing, I grew up surfing and skating, and skateboarding. Actually, it hurt me quite a bit, and I had to kind of give it up at a younger age and pivot to water sports and, wakeboarding and surfing. I mean, I love doing all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I could keep going. But.
Well, motocross and climbing are some of my other addictions of the past. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that's part of, I think for us who have had to spend way too much time sitting around desks in our latter years, like that's part of what keeps us involved and like excited and about, about hunting is like, as planning these adventures that we get to go on is, thinking about the next opportunity to go on an adventure, which buddies you're going to be with. And you're absolutely right. It makes life more rich. It literally is the spice of life, is like having these experiences that center you and ground you and make you appreciative of where you're at and the things that you have by taking you back to the most basic, of humanity, which is almost survival, if you will. It's like, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I think just like you said, planning, going into these things and planning, even if for those of us out there that aren't able to do this on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, even if you can get out once or twice a year and put hard, dedicated time into planning these things and including your best friends or your family in on these things, those experiences as you go into them are so fulfilling, and they pay off exponentially for your personal growth as a human being and your personal relationships with these people. So yeah, and going back to that, planning these things is key. And hunting is at par. If some of you don't skydive, it is at par with skydiving. It is at par with these things that are, some people may put them on a pedestal that's outside of, psychologically sane, but it is at par. You are in those moments, you have a bear at 13 yards from you, and you don't know if it's going to attack you or if you're going to be able to get an arrow, draw back and put it through its heart and provide this meal for a local community or for your family. It is insane.
Pretty intense.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome. Hey, I was curious, and just not to, so it's, I don't know if it's a deviation. Do you know the Magpul guys?
I do not.
So there's a couple of guys. I'd love to introduce you at some point to Cody Carroll and Kalen, whose last name I can always slaughter. But both of these guys, they were the guys that set the high altitude. They were the team that went to the Himalayas and set the highest altitude skydiving records. And they're big time users of like GoPro. They're super creative dudes, and they love to raft. They love to overland, and they're like not that we're like young or old, but in our demographic, like if you were to scoop up the 5 guys on this podcast, they fall into our demographic. And that's just because they're just adventure seekers. And so they hunt, they love long range shooting. They, jump out of the backs of airplanes. They, actually
my kind of guys. Yeah.
Oh dude.
I'd love to meet them.
You absolutely love to introduce you. But I mean, I think that's we're in a really unique place right now in our country, in our lifestyles, where people are starting to value experiences more than things. And so I think that's what this captures, what you guys are doing is this great opportunity where even if it's You know, I say experiences more than things. Dave gives me a hard time about being a gear junkie. But the reason I have gear is because there's an experience that I'm planning on going on and I want to do. And like the things that I accumulate, it's all just kit. It's stuff that I'm throwing in the backpack so that I can go have a wonderful experience, because to me, that experience is what I want. And that's the experience that I want other people to have. It's what I want my kids to have. And I think that actually kind of leads me full circle to the question I was going to ask you, Jim, is like, and if you've got someplace else to go there first. But like, what are the, like, if you're going to say, hey, have your vehicle outfitted, like, so that you can have these experiences, what do you do? What are the kind of the basics, if you want to throw a couple basics out there?
Yeah. So, you know, some of the couple of basics to have it, you know, first off, you know, you're going to need, you know, basic living things inside your van. You know, obviously, you know, the essentials, you know, everything from the, you know, the solar power to power our cameras, you know, as we're traveling around, to the, you know, I don't even know. Brandon might be able to speak on it better than I. He's way more familiar with the whole, you know, getting out the vans and stuff. But for me, you know, I want to be able to have a camera, a laptop, and be able to shoot quickly, wherever I am, and share that experience quickly with, you know, my fans, followers, friends, family, and things of that nature. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I'm kind of like this nomadic filmmaker that just wants to travel around, meet cool people, and tell a cool story. And that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, I think for that, Jim, those are key components to what we do as professional filmmakers, producers. And to make those things functional, you have to have power. So if you're going the van conversion route in the overland space, power is essential. Solar system, a bulletproof solar system that can harbor enough juice to get you through your production. As you plan these things out, you can plan how many times you can charge your camera, how many times you can charge your computer, based off of the marine grade batteries you have chain linked to your inverter. And that can be anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on how efficient you are. So yeah, a robust solar system is key. And if you are in an area where it is raining all the time, you may have to pivot. And depending on the time of year, again, you're going into this, you're planning this. So your solar system will serve you just as well as you're planning. So you always have to pre-produce the crap out of these things to make sure you're on par with what you're going to want to do. If you have 3-day window of sun and the rest is rain, then you're going to have to plan around that. You're going to have to plan around your going into this production with fully charged system. That's going to last us X amount of days, say 5 days. Then it's going to rain. Then you have a pickup of 3 days. Those 3 days are going to get you charged back up, and they're going to get you through the rest of your production. I can't reiterate. You need a robust power system, and solar is the way to go. I would say a secondary thing is a water system. You want a water pump. You want, if you're out there long periods of time and you want to be comfortable, an indoor or outdoor shower. And with that, a water heater. Why not? If you're going to do it you're going to do it in a van, get a water heater. Have a hot shower out there. And if you're if you're in an area where you can pull water out of a creek, then you're going to have circulating water that's clean and hot. Man, I'm just getting myself all worked up right now.
Everybody loves a hot shower. I mean, at the end of the day, you've been humping out, you know, miles with a camera on your back or whatever it is. You want to jump into, you know, a hot shower. I mean, that revives you. That and a cup of coffee, and you're good to go.
And I can speak from experience on that. Like, having spent it early in my career, several months at a time, living in tents, working as a field biologist out in the middle of the hot sun, and you get so desperate for a shower that you'll literally jump into anything. Like anything wet, you will jump into.
Like,
I know, right? I'm not going to tell the story. I'm just saying, I appreciate having something set up with a hot shower.
Have you told that story? Like, he was in the middle of nowhere, just to make the short version, because Dave will tell the long version. It's like got some old swimming pool that's full of like some people invite him over for a swim.
It's a stock tank.
So this,
it's soup.
It's this. Yeah, so
Jumps in
this old rancher invited me over
mosquito
for a swim.
soup.
Invites me over for a swim, and he has this big swimming pool in his backyard. And in the house, he has pictures of this pool filled with water, crystal clear blue.
Yeah, that pool was in Hawaii.
Those pictures were 40 years old, So I go out there, and he said that the pool cracked a couple decades ago, and so now what he does is he runs a pump from a stock pond to fill the pool, and the water from the stock pond comes out of this air quote river, which is really just like it's a semi-ephemeral stream that by August it's just murky, muddy, kind of just disgusting water. So it's pumped into this stock pond and then pumped into the pool, and it's what's been in a stock pond all summer. And I cannonballed into that thing. It was the greatest bath I'd ever had. And then I had to hose down on the prairie loo after that. But yeah, those were the days. Those were the days.
Good time.
I will tell you,
a man with a good shower.
Yeah, I went on a production recently with AdVANture photographer Chris Burkhardt, and it was a full-on van life mission to Yosemite Valley. We did a full-on climbing piece for Black Diamond, and had some really good buddies with me. But this was, again, going into pre-planning. We've got to plan this stuff out way in advance. We got our permits. We had everything. We were dialed. We get there. We climb our butts off. We're getting we have our on-wall photographer, filmmaker. Then we had the guy at the base. And he's climbing all kinds of different climbs. And by the end of the 2.5 days, 3 days, he is exhausted. He's disgustingly sweaty and full of who knows what. And this is Yosemite Valley. You have the Merced River running through this. And not only is this something he traditionalizes for himself, but he finds himself, we follow him as the production crew down to the river, and he strips butt naked and is like, I need to get in this water. And this water is ice cold. This is snow melt. He jumps in butt naked, cleans himself up, towels off, hops in the van, drives back 5 hours back to San Luis Obispo. And it, like you said, it's, you have to do it. Sometimes it's mentally, you're incapable of moving forward in your life.
So we call that the dead man float, by the way, in the group I backpack with. You're backpacking for several days in the high country and come up to one of these glacial fed lakes, and you look at it and you're like, oh man, I mean, I need a bath. I don't know if I can do it. You strip down to nothing and you just belly flop in and just float there on your face and do the dead man float in that ice cold water. That's what we always call it, the dead man float.
As a former natural resource professional who worked on impaired streams, I got to tell you, like, one of the things that I used to like, it just used to make me just like, it used to light my hair on fire. You'd have these backpacking, I'm going to pick on, like, I won't say the name of the group, but they're from central Wyoming. They'd be like, yeah, we hike around the hills for 2 weeks and we're so sweaty and stinky and like everything's and then we find a little stream and we all just like take all our clothes off and sit in it. And I'm like, no.
Impaired stream.
Please.
Yeah, then I roll up in the van and start to try to filter that stuff. Come on.
Towel off first, please.
Yeah, so the filtration system in the van has to be pretty good.
Very important.
Very robust.
It's critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what are some of the places that you're going to be exploring in your first season?
Sure. I'll just start off with a few of the episodes that I'll be working on, and then Brandon can talk about some of the stuff that he'll be doing. So if you've ever watched, and I know this was family friendly, but the movie Jackass with Johnny Knoxville, one of the consultants on that was Manny Pubic. Anyway, Manny has invited me to come down to the Everglades. If you look him up on Wikipedia, he's known as the quote Shark Man. He dives with all kinds of sharks. He hangs with alligators. He's fearless in the water, and so he's like, hey, come on down. We'll do a 2-part series. We'll talk about invasive species in the Everglades. We'll build tridents. We'll spear tilapia. We'll catch, Burmese pythons. And we'll eat them and we'll skin them and we'll talk about sustainability. And my background is what I've done my whole life. I'm like, sign me up. So the first week of June, I'm going to drive from Montana all the way down to Florida. I'll meet up with him and we're going to do a 2-part series there. Then I'll turn and come back to Montana. I think we're going to do a dino dig with Eric Siegfried, the founder of Onyx, on his property over in eastern Montana. Talk a little bit about Onyx Off-Road and then the Onyx Hunt app, and we're going to do a full-on dino dig. And I've been there before, so I know what to expect. I found a T-Rex tooth on my very first dig with Eric. And we may have a guest on there. Chris Burkhardt was going to come on that one, but I think he's super busy, I think Brandon was saying. So he may not be able to hit us on that one. But we'll do a little bit of fishing on Fort Peck. And then we're going to do a show with Cryptech founder, CEO Butch Whiting, talk about Cryptech and stuff like that. And we're going to hunt in eastern. I think it's Southern Oregon, right on the California border for blacktails with DMAC Outfitters and those guys, Todd Erickson. And then I'm going to come, that'll be in October, and then we're going to do a First Nation piece in Saskatchewan with my friend Dusty Gopher. He has Helene Lake Outfitters. We're going to talk a little bit about, their traditions as a tribe, Saskatchewan, and then we're going to hunt big whitetails with the current owner, James Margot of AdVANture Company.
That's super cool.
And then Brandon, maybe Brandon can talk a little bit about some of the episodes he'll do.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's really cool to be able to do this with you, Jim, because not only are we tapping all of the things that you're previously connected with, but we're able to go on different adventures with the crew of people that I'm networked with, and that brings us all over the place. So, like you said, Canada, South Florida, you're actually going up to the Northeast to go spearfishing, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, with Peter Coriel, famous underwater spearfisher, photographer. We're going to be spearfishing rockfish right outside of like New York City, like right in the harbor, in about 40, 50 feet of water. Back in the day, I was in the Marines. I did a lot of free diving, and so I love spearfishing. So I thought I reached out to him on Instagram, and he has invited us to do a sustainable piece, one in the Northeast and then down in Baja, with Brandon, where we'll run out and we're going to do a bunch of spearfishing for bluefin and wahoo and things of that nature. So
so that's really cool, being able to cross cut those things. Two completely polar opposite environments: Baja, Mexico, the Northeast of in New York. Just crazy. And I'll be going on different adventures with like Chris Burkhardt. We're going to do, I think we're going to do a trike flight out near the Sierras, which is going to be ridiculous. We're going to cruise out there in our vans, camp out, and explore this specific area from the sky, which
that's awesome.
It's going to be scary. I might even consider bringing my parachute and jumping out just for fun, depending on how high we can get.
I know Dave would.
No.
You could land right next to that soccer van.
Yeah, Dave, we might bring you out there and just have a whole like ground crew and try to land right there on the minivan. That could be cool.
Oh, we could do it.
I'll watch.
Yeah. Dave will drive. He'll drive
on the recovery
too.
crew. I'll be on the recovery crew. There you go.
Okay.
We are doing an elk hunt. We are doing an elk hunt in Montana, so I'll be hunting in Montana for public land. Helena National Forest, and meanwhile, Brandon will be hunting a Roosevelt in Oregon, and so we're gonna, almost like, meanwhile in Oregon, and meanwhile in Montana, so we can go back and forth and talk a little bit about our, the trials and errors of hunting public land elk. I mean, let's face it, they're tough to hunt.
Are you going to feature like you sitting in a bar, like drinking a beer while Brandon's still trying to find his elk? Is that the whole idea? Is he be like,
that's what I hear. Neffy, this is what I hear, and I'm excited about the challenge. So bring it on.
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest Roosevelt elk. I don't know.
I've never hunted Roosevelt, so I'm a little jealous.
That sounds super awesome. I've never hunted Roosevelt elk either. That sounds awesome. I'm getting public land. Are you allowed to say where you're going to be hunting public land? Just generally speaking.
Yeah,
I know you said Montana, but
literally right outside the state capital, Helena, Montana. I'll be hunting not too far from there in the Helena National Forest. Actually, I've got some really cool wallows that I like to go and sit around, build ground blinds, and especially early season, that first week. If you play the winds right and you sit still long enough, they come to you. So I'm going to be that guy.
I was going to say,
so I can't help.
Go ahead.
I can't help this, by the way, Nephi. I can't help. There's my last public lands.
Whoa.
Unreal.
By the way,
stud.
David, we need to get you on an AdVANture Hunter show.
You do. He has to bring a rented van though. Like kit it out. Kit it out. Like Brandon will make a shopping list. Like he'll go get his composting toilet and stuff, and then he'll mount it all in a rented van. He has 24 hours to get it all kitted out, and then he drives the rented van. I love it. I'm in.
Done. That is an epic concept.
Do it.
I was going to criticize Nephi earlier when he was talking about, how we're trading possessions for experiences, and then he went on this whole tirade about all these possessions he needs to have his experiences.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave. Dig it.
And my comment to him is in rebuttal has always been, my best experiences that have shaped my life are because I have such poor equipment that it puts me in just really bad situations that become very memorable.
Dave's got more adventures than anybody I know, but it's not because it should not have been an adventure. No,
if I had his gear, it wouldn't have been an adventure.
No, it wouldn't have been an adventure at all. It'd have been like, oh yeah, and then I walked to the top of the mountain and sat and waited for an elk. It wouldn't be like, and then hypothermia set in, and I was
the minivan heater died.
Yeah. And so did Dave. That'll be how we end this entire story. Like later on, we write the book about Dave. The minivan heater died, and so did Dave.
I think, based on Brandon's story, his backstory, I'm guessing, that you have. So you've got this.
Dave's always looking
fantastic
for friends,
van. I'm looking for
imaginary
friends. But I'm guessing that you lived your life similar to how I lived my life.
We are
as
bros.
far as not needing a lot of things to have a good time.
100%. All you need back in my day was a surfboard, and you'd bum some wax off somebody else. You wouldn't even buy wax. You'd bum wax, then you'd go tromp around in your 1990 Oldsmobile looking for a good place to surf, and that was it.
I had a Ford Taurus. Like an old bubble version Ford Taurus. I used to sleep in rest areas because I didn't want to, I couldn't afford to buy, rent hotel rooms or anything. I'd sleep in rest area parking lots and then bathe in little ponds outside the rest area.
You're really good at that bathing aspect in those safe areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very clean
get
guy.
It down. Get it down.
We, one of my favorite experiences to talk about, like, I think we all come from the same place. Like when I was in college, I had a 1989 Lincoln Town Car. And what we used to do is we would load this thing up and go down to Moab and try and figure out how long we could live in Moab, living on, what potash is? It's right along the Colorado River. It's great climbing right along the river where you camp for free. And so we'd be camping along potash, climbing along the cliffs there. And then we'd try and sneak into all the different hotels in Moab for continental breakfast. So you're trying to figure out which one you park at this day. So you walk in the back door, you walk down to the continental breakfast, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're here. Oh yeah, we're in that other room up there. See,
we got to a point where we were bumming showers off of different resorts, low budget resorts. We'd find out ways to hop in there and get free showers and just hop out and just keep driving.
That's what the pool's for.
Exactly. And if you didn't find a shower, you found a pool or a hot tub, and then you just go back to dirt bagging.
So the one thing about my Taurus that was no good is I treated it like it was a lifted truck, and I took it to places. And I had on one occasion when I got myself into a bad spot, I actually took a rock and split the gas tank. And so my entire gas tank drained out 60 miles from the nearest paved road. So it would have been nicer to have that the van that you've got, the AdVANture van, right?
You definitely want those skid plates on these AdVANture vans if you're going to be sending it. We're
working with a really, really cool company called Van Compass. They did all the undercarriage, the skid plates, the off-road shocks. They went and added extra leaves to the springs on the back end to accommodate all the weight. People don't realize when you kit out a van, it's all of a sudden all that weight, the wood, the metal, whatever you're putting inside of it, the roof rack, that all starts to settle in, and all of a sudden your clearance goes from what would have been a lot better to go off road. Now you're kind of it's a little off. But Van Compass guys they're right out of Post Falls, Idaho. They did a number on both of our vans and helped kit us out. And the difference between factory shocks and versus what they've done is night and day. When we hit the off road, it's night and day. So,
Well, I'm excited to see this show. I'm super excited. But one thing that you haven't done yet is really plugged where we can find it and when we can find it officially.
Yeah.
Plug away.
Yeah. So officially, if you want to follow AdVANture Hunter, you can follow us on Instagram at AdVANture Hunter. And just that's really easy to find us there. But as far as the show goes, we air on the Sportsman Channel. That would be in quarter 1 and 2 of 2021. So January of 2021 at 8:30 p.m. Eastern and 11 p.m. Eastern. And you'll catch us there. And there'll be 2 other airings as well that week. So 4 airings a week. And that will run for all the way from January through the end of June. Then quarter 3 and 4, we're in discussions now with either, doing something with either Waypoint TV or another digital platform where you can watch us for free on all the Samsung smart TVs, Pluto, and some of those other digital platforms. So
this is so cool. This is such a cool idea, and I think there's so many people out there that can relate. And for folks like Mike and Nephi and myself, who are maybe a little past their prime now and strapped down with the family, we can live vicariously through some of your adventures. That I'm excited about that for sure. Hey, but I don't know if Mike or Nephi have any other questions, or if you guys have anything else you want to talk about. But we have a question we like to end our podcast with for all of our guests. So I'll wait and leave the floor open for a second in case anybody else has any questions here.
I was just happy to be on here. Thank you guys for giving us a platform on your mountain today to talk a little bit about our show. That means a lot.
And well, it's mutual. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend with us. And this is a fun conversation. I've really enjoyed this. I think this is one of those where if we all poured a beer or something and sat around a table, we'd have a lot of fun stories to share. So I hope to be able to catch up more in the future, because I think we just sort of hit the tip of the iceberg here.
I think we did. Yeah, I think we've just hit all of you guys. We haven't even dived. I know very minimal about you guys, and I would love to hear your stories, your background. So I definitely would love to grab a beer and learn about you guys and your backgrounds, and yeah, maybe bring you on the show sometime. That'd be fun.
When you're passing through Wyoming, you just look us up.
Give you a jingle. Heck yeah.
Because it's Wyoming, just when you run into somebody at a rest area, a convenience store, a grocery store, just say, "Hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Dave, Nephi, or Mike," and they'll probably know who we are. It's a pretty small state. We have that old saying here: it's a small town with really long streets. So we kind of all know everybody here. But because of your backgrounds, I'm really excited about asking this question, because this is one we asked all of our guests. And so you're on the Your Mountain podcast, and we're talking about issues related to land, water, and wildlife and conservation. And people that get into it for different reasons, but a lot of people get into it because they've had a unique experience growing up, or they have a special place to them that fuels their fire, or something that's really special that makes them passionate about this work and being involved in this space. So I want to ask each one of you, what's your mountain? What is that place? The physical or metaphorical, whatever you want it to be. It's anything you want it to be, but what's that to you? What's your mountain?
Brandon, maybe you go first. I love getting caught off guard, but you know what? Maybe I will go. My mountain is to try to strive to be the best storyteller I can, and leave a mark behind on the planet that like my kids can look up and say, "Oh, my dad, he helped, maybe he did this or that," but I want them to be proud of me, and so my mountain is to make my kids proud that, that I was a hard worker, and that I, did something and left my mark behind. And I hope that, that I left behind, and changed and transformed people's lives and made a difference. I mean, that's the mountain. I always strive to be climbing to the top of it, and I'm never there. So I constantly am trying to improve on my filmmaking and editing and storytelling. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's very high attainable goal right there. If we're going more physical mountain location, there is a wooded glen in the southeastern segment of my grandpa's ranch. He purchased when I was about 3 years old. And this is a place that I've been going to since then, going with my dad. And then over the years being transitioned into going on these adventures by myself. But I would find myself driving my vehicle out to this specific spot and going on a specific hike, taking me up to this area that opens up into a beautiful meadow. There's a pond in the middle that turns into a wallow in the fall. There's these beautiful pine trees that are anywhere from, saplings all the way to 300-year-old pines. And it's just an absolute iconic, beautiful area. And in my mind, that's where I want to be 24/7. I want to be in that beautiful area. I want to be there with the people I love and show them this. I don't know. That's what I live for, these incredible, beautiful locations, and then sharing that with others. One thing, not to get too far off guard on this, not too far down a political hole, but I was listening to Meat Eater podcast and they had Mark Kurlansky on. You guys probably listened to this episode too, but he was talking about sustainability. He was talking about what he loves, which is salmon fishing and salmon sustainability across the globe. On that podcast, he mentions that talking and referring to dams, he says dams are costly to fix. This is a problem that they're costly to fix. Sometimes you have to change your whole idea of economical development. And that refers to the mass of humanity. And for me, I think that is something I've always resonated with, didn't know how to put it into words, and heard him speak to that. And that is something that is so close to my heart. I think our economic development in today's day and age is way too fast. It's way too robust. We need to take a step back. We need to take a hike. We need to get to that wooded glen. We need to sit with ourselves. We need to be self-reflective. We need to know what life is really about, what brings us true joy. And for me, it's being in the woods. It's personal, rich relationships. And I think pivoting from our current economical development and our idea of that in the US, but also globally, is going to be one of the only ways we do that as a human race. We need to change our the way we see the world, the way we make money. It's too fast. We need to slow down. We need to get back into the woods. So,
man, when you figure out how to do that at scale, you're gonna be a wealthy man.
So my idea of doing that at scale is non-existent, and I just love sharing that with new friends like you guys. I think it's something that it rings so true in my soul, and I think you guys share the same sentiment. So I love just being on the same page and just talking about this stuff.
I think the thing that you said that, like, when Dave, I love this, when you talked about those experiences, and then you said what's important to you, and Dave said when you find that, you'll be a wealthy man. Maybe that's the secret. When we actually find that, and maybe it's not dollars, that's when you become a wealthy man. That's when you really have
profound.
That's when you really have things where it no longer matters what's in your bank account.
So you can trade all that gear.
Hey man,
spiritually wealthy.
The gear is just money. As if it gets you to where, and money's not important.
But the gear is.
What's important is experiences. It's being able
I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win this thing from earlier. So the gear's not important because the money's not important.
If what you have is a minivan from the 90s, that is your adventure. You go out and you hammer that thing and you live your dream. Get out there and have fun. You do not need a brand new 2020 Mercedes Sprinter. Do not be caught off guard by that. You can have these fun, exciting adventures with whatever you have.
Yep,
man. I got to tell you,
just buy rain gear, Dave. Just own a set of rain gear. Just any set. That's all I'm asking for.
You talk about
anything.
Nephi, you want to say what Butch Whiting's nickname was?
Butch calls Dave. Butch calls Dave Hefty. that's his
I'm gonna have to talk to him. I'm gonna text him.
My rain gear are actually not even real hefty bags. They're the generic version.
Yeah, he showed Butch a picture of him like sitting on top of this super high peak in Wyoming, just like shivering. And Butch is like, "What do you have on?" It's like, "That's my rain gear." It's like a plastic bag. And Butch started to just belly laugh, and he's like, "No, you have a new nickname, bro. You're hefty."
I love it. That's great. Butch is such a great dude. I've loved him and Josh since I've known those guys since inception. So I've been working with them for 10 years. Yeah, I love those guys.
Hey, having said that,
sounds like you need to hit Butch up for some new rain gear, Dave.
I'll put a word in for you, Hefty.
No, then I wouldn't have any good stories.
That's right.
It's a good one.
It takes all types. Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Hey. Thank you, both you guys for being here. Jim and Brandon, really appreciate you taking all this time with us. Really appreciate you sharing your vision for the show. Really appreciate you sharing with us your respective mountains. And to everybody that's listening, I'd say, get out there, check out Jim Kinsey and Brandon Nelson on AdVANture, co-hosts of AdVANture, starting in January of 2021. I know I'm going to be tuning in. I'm really excited about it. And I think you guys are going to love our sign off here. The way we end every show, based on your vision for this show. We end every show this way. Everybody, thanks for listening. And remember that life is about experiences. So go have one.